Good morning, good afternoon, and good evening, Sellers Sessions. I am so excited today to have with me one of my dearest and closest friends to my heart. I don't know if she knows this, but Amanda Balcazar in the house.
Oh, hey, thank you. Yes, I know. I know. Every time we see, you can't fake that type of love and hug and just enjoyment when we're around each other. So, yes, love it.
Connection. And it's worth mentioning that before getting onto this podcast, we've been chatting for like half an hour. I'm like, maybe it's time that we actually turn on the camera and show the world what we're about to share with them. So
Exactly.
I'm so glad you're here, Amanda. I mean, you should have been here day one, but it's so hard to get you, Amanda. It's so hard to get you on.
Oh, well, thank you for that. It's I I don't know why that I'm pretty currently we're pretty structured with like our, how we operate and how we operate our business and stuff, and pretty selective with being, life and business and stuff like that. So like really having a solid grip on what to do, what not to do, and all that kind of stuff. But I'm thankful that you asked, and I'm thankful that you gave me grace. We were like, hey, you want to show up in 2 days? And I'm like, I love being a spontaneous person, but when it comes to like, having that type of structure, it just works really, really well all around with our life flow, which has taken a long time to develop. So I just like to be very strategic with the different things, the activities that go on, and
I love that
and
we're
what we
starting.
commit to.
I love that we're starting with this, Amanda, because what I know about you and John, and shout out to John, he may
Yes.
have saved my life on Lake Travis. Forever, I will
I'm sure.
mention this.
Oh my goodness.
But you and him have, created, I mean, beside a beautiful family that you have, but you have created, or at least one business that I know of that's extremely successful. I'm sure you have other ventures too, but you said something so powerful. You said we are so structured right now and we're so organized with the time that we have. And I want to ask you, has it always been this way for you? And if not, what were some of the steps that you took to get to this point? Because this is something that I struggle with in my life right now, kind of making sure I prioritize every single thing I need.
Yeah. I really think that no, it hasn't always been like that, and I don't think it always is. I really think that it's just you know, seasons within your life, and sometimes different things or projects or things you're working on demand a little bit more spontaneity, and things that, when you're going into spaces that are unknown or whatever, you have to be willing to go and do things. And if there's a startup phase in a business or anything, any type of project, whatever, you're going to have to, things might be a little bit off balance, whatever you want to say. But then, you can evaluate, and it doesn't always have to be that. We really like to focus on, we use a term called stretch and secure. So like will stretch ourselves, and you can feel that within, business and life when you're pushing yourself and you're challenging yourself. But in order to really be able to be make progress and layer stuff on, you stretch and then you secure that. So when you're feeling like, okay, I'm doing all of these things, that I'm learning new things, that I'm, okay, it's time to take those things and hone in and really, focus, get a little bit of structure around it until you can lock it in, and then you can layer on other things. So that's the flow. Like we know that there's sometimes we're in a stretch zone. Like right now, like we just started, my daughter, we're doing kind of like a hybrid homeschool thing. I never thought I'd do anything like that, whatever, but it's not a full like all on me type situation, but it is, once she started this, it is going to be a little bit of a change. So I gave ourselves space for that. Like, for example, there's a bunch of events coming up and this, that, and the other that could be in the ecom space that we love hanging out with all of our ecom friends. But we took a step back and I'm like, this is going to be a new thing. We're embracing a new thing. And I'm not going to take new thing after new thing. I need to give space to this and recognize that we're going to need, this is a little bit of a stretch. Once we like secure that and we're good, then you layer on other stuff. Otherwise you're just going crazy and, not really, not really like being able to do that. So I just, that's kind of how we look at it. And it's not always, like I said, we are not super like regimented all the time. Again, it just depends on what we're working on, what we're focused on. And yeah, we do find that it works a lot better when we do have kind of those core points of structure. Like when we are very much saying, oh, if we don't have, a regular alignment or whatever, like we do weekly alignments, and all that stuff minimally. And then sometimes like daily, or it could be even just a 5-10 minute thing to be like, okay, this is what we're working on. We already planned our week, but what are we working on, today? Is there any audibles that happen? Because, kids life audibles happen, right? So we're like, is there any audibles where we need to be able to support each other, because he has his plan, I have my plan, and then we need to figure that out. So it's never always been like this. It's been such a learning. Every single thing that's changes every single time you do a different type of business model, anything, you have to regroup and kind of figure that out, and like I said, align, lock it in, and layer on. So
but you have some like core values or core like systems that, for any venture you do, you apply those specific things and then you build upon depending on what situation you're in, right? Is that essentially what
totally. Absolutely. And I think that's probably is something that comes with, so two main factors that's been very much solidified. One, we've been working together for a very long time. It's been 14 years full time now. And so there's different things that's been, all over the place. And so we should be we'd be really crappy if we weren't making progress after that long, right? So there are things that you learn, and it really is always the foundational aspect, whether it's business or life. Like, it's just, if you can lock in those foundations and then, like you said, continue to build off of that, then all you're doing every single time you're feeling a little bit off or whatever, you just go back to those, those core foundations. And like I said, it can be like, if something feels a little bit like hectic or whatever, we're like, oh, well, guess what? We haven't been aligning, every single day. Let's do that, because we're just a little bit off. So once we do that, we kind of get back into sync. But yeah, I think that, again, that is mainly, that's why when I like talk business or whatever, like I'm not a tips and tricks, I'm not a hacky, like, whatever. I'm literally, because I've seen it proven over and over again, it's master the mundane. It's that slight edge. It's never this like, crazy whatever thing that comes out of it. And I think that sometimes, yes, people can, and I don't even like saying getting lucky. It's not about getting lucky. It's about being prepared and utilizing those, core foundations over time. And then, there might be some amazing idea that you have that you can, then you're ready to be able to take that and, like, blow it up. But right now, like, even with like our business and everything that we are doing, the second thing that I was going to say is that COVID actually helped that solidify that a lot, because in this space, and being an entrepreneur and literally getting to do whatever the hell you want whenever you want, pretty much. Like, you can sleep all day if you want. You're not going to get paid, your business isn't going to grow, but you call the shots. So with that, you really have to figure out, the disciplines of how you're going to operate in order to really achieve your goals. So when we were basically forced to chill out, we were traveling a lot more. I was traveling a heck of a lot more pre-COVID, and then we were kind of forced to chill out. And everybody, we talked about this a little bit, on our trip, Bella, and we said that, that was kind of like the big pause or whatever. And everybody didn't know what was going on or whatever. And we were just like, you know what? We have something that's working. Let's just double down on that. We need to cut out all the noise of all the stuff. Focus here. Focus on what we know. That's it. And it worked. And we're like, okay, so then we just continue to do that. And now it gave us a little bit of a paradigm shift. It doesn't mean that you don't want to do other things, but we cut off, because you had just mentioned that, you might have other business ventures. We've had plenty of different business ventures. You know what we did? We shut everything else out. We phased literally everything else out. We looked and we said, really, what do we want to do? Like, do we want to focus on this? Do we want to half-ass grow some of all of these different businesses that we can do a bunch of things? Or is this what we really want to do? Do we want to dive in here? And doesn't mean that we're going to do that just this thing forever, but it's a stretch and secure. If we're sitting here, we really want to stretch. And then once it's secure, then again, do we want to continue to build on this business? Do we want to do some other things, which we do have other things on our radar? But again, we have to be very mindful of when we decide to take other things on, so that we don't, really water down our efforts and become ineffective.
Oh, I love this so much. And I really want like our listeners to really think about what you just said very deeply right now. Because Juan, you speak so fast because you have so many things in your mind. But you're saying so many good gold nuggets that it's like you're packing everything so much. So just reiterating, if you have a bunch of different income streams or businesses that you're trying to create, internally it may feel good. People always bring this essence of like, oh my God, have multiple streams. That's great. Obviously, who doesn't want multiple streams? But are those multiple streams taking a lot of your focus? And is that focus bringing enough returns? And like you said, kind of focus on the ones that are giving you the most right now, perfect it to the point where it's so good that you can now afford to take on the second, third, fifth, 10th project, but is focusing your attention on what works first. Do you feel
Yeah.
like a lot of people don't get to that success point because their focus is too spread out? What are your thoughts on that?
I actually think that in the beginning, when I think exploration is normal and I think it's important. So I don't necessarily look back and see like, okay, so we should have drilled down on just one thing. I think it gives you a lot of tools in your toolbox. I think you have to explore, like when I talked about us, traveling a lot more before, you kind of have to do that. Like you have to go and find out, what events do I really want to go to? You want to kind of like spread your wings, be, open to everything. That's how I looked at it. If we're going to try something new, you don't know what you don't know. So you really have to do that. But then I think that you would, want to take that. And I think, again, it's just different cycles within business or whatever. You're going to try and test a lot of different things. It's the same thing. Like if you're going to do, anything with marketing, you're going to do anything with whatever, you want to test different things, but you really want to be mindful of not continuing to always do that. Like you're doing that to have feedback, so that have that feedback loop. So I don't think there's anything wrong in the beginning for testing. I think that what happens though is that, you are not taking that time back to analyze what truly is working. And then it can be really hard. Like you might worked really hard on one of these businesses or one of these ideas or something, and you're invested, right? People do that with relationships. People do it, and it's really, really hard to cut it off. But it again, there's been so many ways that once that has been proven to us because we've taken that and it's been really hard and we're like, we put so much. I mean, I traveled to China to go like start creating this one brand and blah blah blah, and it wasn't anything that was like super like deep passionate to me, but we put a lot of time and effort into it. Now where I'm okay with not with letting that stuff go is because I realize that even though I might be phasing out that brand that sure could have some success or whatever, I'm not losing all of the skills and the lessons and everything that I've gained from focusing on that project. And so I think if you can hold on to that, it's not like a waste. It's never a waste. Nothing is ever a waste. Like whether you've failed at it or you just decide that, hey, again, this could be successful, but you know what? How much is it going to take me to focus on this, these two businesses, right? How much is it going to take me to hit the goal that I want with these two businesses? Or would it just be easier as a low hanging fruit for me to be like, okay, this one is going to take me a lot more. Let's focus over here and then like build that up. And so that's kind of, how I look at it. So I do encourage people to, try some different things, but I think it's a fine line to be committed and spinning a bunch of plates without taking a step back and being like, what is my true end goal that I want to accomplish? Is it because do I want to hit a collect, do I want to be diversified because I feel better because, things can be crazy and what happens if this business goes down, but then I have this one land. Okay, that's fine, but I mean, if you really go out there and you find that you are having success in one area, I think that focus is absolutely imperative. And if you really want to continue to take it to that next level. So
Mm, mm, you're right. You're right. I'm like, well, what else do you say? Mic drop.
oh.
Um, you know, you mentioned we get to invest emotionally, and like you said, relationships and businesses, and it's like that awareness of like, you know what? Maybe I didn't do my best, but I invested 5 years, I invested all this money, I can't really let go. So what that does is like, not only is it holding up maybe your cash, but also
Mhm.
that energy. Now you have that negative energy connected to it. And every time you think about it, it's like, oh, I'm a failure. But yet you don't want to let go because that will make it legit, right? It will
Yeah.
make it real now. So
Yeah.
I understand that it's very hard to cut ties, but like you said, I like the exercise that you do because it's like, okay, let's see, I invested 5 years in this. What are the lessons that I learned? Like what I took from this, it's going to help me in my next business, and that's how you break up
Yeah.
basically with relationships, with businesses, with everything. Like, thank God I got to this point. Thank God for the lessons. And now let's move on. But is that cutting that cord, right? Like, that's so difficult. And that makes you reflect and makes
Yeah.
you be aware, like, okay, maybe I wasn't as smart as I thought I was, but it's okay. Like, don't try
Yeah.
to hide that. Like, actually face whatever it's coming to you so you can make peace with it and move on rather than hiding it. And it all comes down to mindset. And do you feel like in your case and John's, do you feel like you've always had this inclination towards like improving your mindset, or what got you to that point where you're both like, we see it, we see how it works, and now we're applying
So we did when we first got together, so we
it?
met real quick out of college. I did mortgages. And so I had happened to meet him, and we became friends there. And so I did it for like a year. And when we got together, no, like there wasn't, I mean, there was always kind of little bits of personal development here and there, but when we got together, we were introduced to like just this awesome couple, and there was some things that they were sharing. Pro tip too, when you're going to be in a relationship, we were actually given or suggested to start reading, whether it's marriage books or relationship books prior, which was imperative as well. Like our relationship is dramatically, different now than what it was. It's always been, wonderful. We've always loved each other, so much, but that communication and that growth together has happened because we've been committed to that kind of like personal development together. And so again, it hasn't always been that way, but we've always been committed to yeah, growing together, learning and growing together, and no matter what element or aspect of our the life that we're in. So it's when we didn't even do business together initially, and so that kind of started like phasing in a little bit, and just evolved. And so again, thankfully both of us really do bring out the best in each other, and we challenge each other with different aspects of life. And so that element of continuous growth is something that I'm very thankful that we have, because it really is just about making progress. Like I don't really care if it's there's no like comparison when it comes to anything. We're all like individuals, and we all start somewhere with different circumstances and whatever. But I do feel obligated for some reason to continue to focus and get better. And no matter what that is, no matter how fast or how slow or whatever, like that's just something that definitely drives us. And so yeah, it's something that has just been developed over time, and we've done a lot. I mean, years ago when we first started our business, we had to cut off, and this is pre like people like, oh yeah, I don't have TV either now. Well, no, it was before you had like all the videos and the apps and all the stuff. Like we legit just cut off our TV. That was a big thing, like to literally have no, like we weren't on the videos, so we cut that off. And it was books, and it was audiobooks, and we called it, like we were like brainwashing ourselves basically with all of this stuff, and it continued on. Like it's a constant, and I think a lot of people in our space do that, which I think is fantastic. And I think it's absolutely necessary, because we all have, you can have those, horrible thoughts. And the reason we've just built up a toolbox over the years that don't let us stay there. So if there's something that, is bothering us, or something that is, causing us to doubt ourselves or this or the other, like we know, like we just have to go back to some of that, personal development or whatever. And like that has really been super helpful. But again, it's always, it's fun because it's a journey, and it's always developing. And anytime like we're feeling a little bit of constraint in one area, we are very resourceful to find great influences or content that's going to help us to solve that. So I think that has been very imperative in our growth. And yeah.
And your skills compared to John's skills, like there, do you have a lot of similarities, or are you very different as far as work style?
Yeah, we are very different when it comes to our strengths within working. And that's kind of what naturally happened, because again, when we started working together, it was just that like we were selling used books online, and our business is dramatically different from how we did that to, it's kind of the typical story. We did that for a while, then we did retail arbitrage, online arbitrage. And then when I had my daughter, we were like, okay, well, we need to figure something out. And I don't want to be running all over here. It was fun because we got to do it together, but I don't want to be running all over doing this. Like, we need to create our own brand. So that happened, back in like 2018 is when we kind of established that. But no, we ended up having very different, like I said, strengths and weaknesses. And thankfully, for the most part, and I think this really helps us in general. I mean, this was established pre us even working together, is that like we naturally kind of gravitate and fill in the gaps on things. So it's just awesome. That's kind of where I look at whether it's, we talk about life balance or relationship balance or whatever it is. I never really look at it like a balance. I look at it kind of like a full pie, and the little slivers of those pie, it changes depending. So like, sometimes you're going to do more of, one thing, sometimes you're going to do more of another. And it's not a perfectly like, I'm going to, divide my time up or my energy up, equally all the time. And I feel like that's the same thing with, our relationship and our strengths and weaknesses, is like us coming together, whether it's within our, life or our business, which is all very much intertwined, is just one big pie. So we throw everything together at the pie. And sometimes my piece on some things might be a little bit bigger. And, on other things, his might be a little bit bigger based on our strengths, weaknesses, likes, dislikes, whatever. Some stuff that I very much am either not good at, don't have the attention for, really want no part of. Thankfully, he's either interested in or he doesn't mind that, and vice versa. And it's funny, the stuff that we'll talk to each other about, and I'll get all amped up about, and we talk a lot about business and this stuff. And it's nice to talk about it, but truly, like, we'll look at each other and I'll be like, if I had to do that, I'd be miserable. Like that, what you're doing over there with our business, I'm glad that you're good at it and you like it, because I would absolutely hate that piece of the business. So it's, yeah, it was just nice that that kind of naturally developed. But I think that also, again, happened in life. And we're just not, there's not traditional rules of anything. There is an ebb and flow of like kind of all the things, but it's based on kind of what we've designed, and that energy, for the most part, balances pretty well.
Mm, you two are like relationship goals. And I love, and that's why I wanted to ask you this questions, because I want our listeners to know that, you two are very different when it comes to business. And even upon meeting you both, you seem so, I mean, you can tell you're so in love, like you just met, even though you've been married for how many years now?
Yeah. Oh gosh, you're married in 2009. So 13? Yeah, it was 13 years this year, I think. Yeah.
So, like, upon meeting you, like, you can just tell how in love you are, but also you can tell how different you are.
Hmm.
And, most people that, are in a long time relationship, you would ask them and they'll be like, yeah, it's because we make it work. Like, I do my own things and he does his own things. And because we're so, we both do our own things, we're happy. But then I look at your relationship and it's like you're so different and you have different skills, and you decided to combine those skills and work together and look at the beautiful creation. And I always see you guys together. I never not see you together. And that's such
Yeah.
a beautiful thing, because you're able to work together yet being so different and be so successful. So would you say that the love of self-development and in making yourself better is something that's so deep ingrained in both of you that kind of brought everything else together? Would you say that that's a big part of it?
Absolutely. I think that's imperative. Like, I don't know how people go through, like, to me, it's just like natural at this point, because again, we've had to work at it for so long. But I don't know how anybody functions without that, like being able to have those, that like wisdom, imparted on you, or those things that you're like taking in and really trying to like self-analyze, self-reflect, but then also, showing up in a way that I think when it comes to the relationship, it's if you guys both want it to work, and both people have to. I mean, it's that's challenging too. So when I talk to people, like, some people are, the other one's already checked out or whatever. There's a lot of different things. But that's with us. We've just, anytime there is that, challenge, or we're not getting along, or man, we can bicker like brother and sister. We can get into heated arguments. We've actually taken a very in-depth like personality type test. I can't remember what it was called, but it was basically what people would go and like corporations would have if they're going to hire an executive. And the guy that was doing it for us afterwards, he was just like, it was one of our friends, but he had access to this. And he's like, I don't, you guys, your stubborn levels are through, both of you are through the, like, I don't understand how this works at all. And I was like, yeah, we're like, yeah, we can see that. Like, that makes sense because we like feel that. Right. So, like, um, yeah, it's just, we have the ultimate respect for each other. And I think that started prior to us being together because we were really good friends. And when you respect somebody, at a very high level, there's that commitment to helping or filling in the gaps on some situations, or analyzing yourself and figuring out what can you do to also help them, because in the beginning you read a lot of this stuff, whether it's the relationship books or the self-help, and you read it for everybody else because you're thinking everybody else that they need to change. Like, I'm good, like, okay, what do I need to do? And it's not like, but then later you start to realize that, like, no, it's really you and your energy and your interaction with them that you need to change. And then that will also, I wouldn't want to say change them, but how they, their energy flow with you, that changes the dynamic. And so again, that's just learning self-actualization over the years. It takes time, whatever, as we grow and mature. But we're both dramatically different people than when we first got together, which is awesome. And I think that's one of the things too. Like, yes, we are together a lot and we are very different, but again, that level of commitment to grow together, I think that helps, because I couldn't imagine also if you're on this one path to growing yourself and the other person doesn't want to grow. That's really hard. That's how people say they grow apart, and I can see that. I see that could definitely happen, and thankfully we grow together instead of growing apart. And I think that matters. And even if we didn't have the same business, even if we weren't working on the same business, which I think strengthens it, it has its major challenges, but also strengthens us when it comes to our communication and our vision and all of that. But even if you're not necessarily, I talked to some of my friends that, their spouse might actually have a job that they're working towards, or career or whatever. And they find that challenging because they're, in pursuit of something different. But I'm like, if you guys you guys can still be a full on team. Like, we joke, we have our logo, it's called BTO3, like Balcazar team of three, my daughter, whatever. So we really look at us as a team, and as a team, everybody has their own positions or whatever to play. And if you guys collectively look at that, like, okay, if my husband really wants to focus on his career and do this or whatever, then what you need to do is decide, is that fulfilling to you as well? You guys need to collectively figure out what that's going to take for him to pursue that. And is that, hopefully that's something that will work with you guys and that's fulfilling enough to you. And then you need to analyze, well, if he's going to need to be able to do this, what do I need to do over here? Especially, if there's children involved or whatever, or vice versa. It's really awesome to see, husbands that are supporting their wives in their, hopes and dreams. But I feel like that has to be a collective. Like, they have to understand the importance of what you're striving for. And you need to look at that like a team, because if I'm out there doing something and I'm achieving my goals, damn straight there's, somebody else on the other position on the team that has to do other things to allow me to achieve at that level that I want to achieve. So I think that it can go either way, and it can change as well. There's going to be different times we might not be operating in this business. We might operate a new business. There have been different things that he supported me in, and vice versa. He's done some really crazy endurance race things, like all these different things that come on there. And then you have to collectively be like, okay, I see myself as a piece of this puzzle, no matter what that means, whether that's supporting in other areas because their time's going to be taken away or whatever. You just have to look at that. And if you can look at your lives as a collective, regardless if it's something that you're just focusing on, if you can communicate that and they understand why you're doing it, and they believe in what you're doing, and that support, it just goes a long way. And so I just look at it like a collective. And no matter, again, what sport you're playing or what you're trying to accomplish or whatever, having everybody on the team kind of moving in that same direction, being aligned, it's synergistic. So it's not just like, oh yeah, I'm going to be able to accomplish this. No, like, you are going to be able to go far beyond if you can get that together.
I'm glad you mentioned that, because maybe people listening to this are like, well, I don't want to do everything with my spouse, and you don't have to. Like, still having that freedom, quotation, because
Mm-hmm.
I mean, you should be free as a human. You
Yeah.
should do whatever you want. Doesn't matter if you're married or not.
Yeah.
But having that support, like, yeah, go do car racing if you want, or yeah, go sign up for that I don't know, jumping from the plane, whatever. You don't have to like all the time the same things, but it's
Right.
so beautiful to see that you both found, out of all the things that you don't have in common, the ones that you do, and really focused on that so much that it kind of overtook everything else, right? Like now
Yeah.
that's the foundation, and everything else off of it is like a derivative of that in a small way. And you still get to be your own individual self and enjoying life at the level that you want, but still know that you are committed to your spouse, your partner, whatever, and create that live together. I mean, that's incredible. That's what
Yeah.
you guys have accomplished is beautiful. So going forward, do you guys, I mean, because this is a mindset show, but do you guys do anything now that to strengthen your self development? Like, are you into any like meditation routine? Are you going to seminars? Like, what is something that you're doing that's maybe different than most people would do?
Always, always, always figuring out that next level of growth, truly. Um, and even now, like again, our relationship's pretty awesome, but we always like we're popping in an audiobook on there was I think it was called a recent one was like relationship grit or something. Like it's just there's that there's you know learning and growing, whether it's from it could be courses, it can be right now I'm very focused on being able to create systems, processes, structure. We really want to be able to grow our team and be able to do that. That's just something that we had not done because it was a blessing and a curse that both of us have been able to step in and fill different roles and wear a lot of different hats within our business. But because of that, we would do all the things. So now we are working on really working and having things in order to be able to offload some of the stuff. So we're not, in the whirlwind of the business all the time. But with that, we identify what are our weaknesses. So I'm always challenging myself on those types of things, and him as well. Like if there's something that we see that is within our current focus or what we're going to do, we want to get better at that. And we're just not we don't just naturally know any of the stuff. We just I mean I told you we went from college to mortgages to selling used books. So it's a constant learning. We didn't have any like formal practice in how to run an e-commerce business, so you're just stumbling and fumbling all the way through and you're trying to evaluate what is most important next and where are my weaknesses that are those weaknesses that do I need to get better at that or do I just not and I need to offload it. So you need to analyze that because you don't need to be good at all the things. And one of the things that we do need to be better at is hiring. We need to be able to hire, we need to be able to delegate. And that's kind of a focus right now. So with that, yes, the content that we're taking in, specifically myself right now, has a lot to do with hiring or building a team. Like I said, creating systems and processes and going to, we'll go to different events. But again, being very strategic with that, it's not just because it's very easy for you to be able to go to whether it's events or take into content and just get in that learning hole. And not really applying it. And so I think taking a step back first and being like, what are we trying to accomplish right now? What do we need to focus on? And then seeking out that content to help you through that time of, strengthening whatever you're trying to strengthen. So when you mentioned the meditation thing, I wish that and actually it's funny that my daughter, so this morning, true story, she came over and she's very high energy with a lot of stuff, but then she's very like can be very zen in a very in an interesting way. So she comes and she plays this like calming, she called it like calming kids music or something on Hey Google, whatever. So she's playing this and she like puts it up really loud and she comes on the couch and she's like laying down with me and I was trying to like do some stuff and she's just like there and she's like calming and I'm like, you know what, I bought you these meditation cards because I really want to. I know how powerful meditation can be. I've tried it multiple times. I'm totally fine with it not being like a traditional type of meditation, but I really don't like I've just tried, I've never got into it, but I know I believe how powerful and beneficial it can be. So I bought these like kids meditation cards that had like and I'm like, you know what, this is going to get me to do this even better, and hopefully like me sharing that with her and doing it with her is going to really help me because I to me that's kind of like a multitasking. I really like that it'll be more fulfilling to me instead of just taking it for myself, and maybe after I see the true benefit then, it'll drive me a little bit more to do it more for myself. But I think this is kind of like the slippery slope. I'm going to go in and, or the gateway drug, whatever. I'm going to do it with my daughter.
Yeah.
And hopefully all these things that don't even make sense. I'm going to do it with my daughter, and then I'm going to see and feel the benefits, and it's going to drive me to continue on, because I think it's incredibly important in this, really high drive, fast paced, we're just bombarded with all the things. I think that is an important piece, and I think that I'm going to really continue to need to do that, to de-stress and all that stuff. But no,
Love it.
I don't really.
I have a system for meditation. First, I'm going to do it. Then I'm going to enjoy it. Then I'm going to see the benefits of it. And once I see the benefits, I'm going to do it more. Did you hear yourself saying all that? I love it. It's like you
Oh,
have
oh, I just feel. I mean, I
and
hope
you
that's how
called
it
it
plays out.
and you called it the gateway drug to meditation, which is worth mentioning again. Like so many gold nuggets. I could go through this whole recording and like literally take quotations from Amanda Balcazar and just like post them for like a month. I'll have plenty content. That's so great. I want to come back to one point though, because again, I mean, you're saying so many important things. Going to conferences, and we have one coming up. Shout out to Helium 10, Still and Still.
Yes.
We go to all these conferences and it's like, oh my god, you find out all this content and it's like you're taking pictures and you're recording and then you go home and you're like, bye, never coming
Yeah.
back to this content again. It's like looking at pictures that you took from your trip 2 years ago at some restaurant. You have a picture of a plate of mashed potatoes, same thing. It's like, how do you guys do that? Because that's something, and I bet you everybody knows, I'm taking this home and I'm going to apply it. But the truth is, not many people do, including moi, sometimes guilty. So how do you do that? How do you go home and be like, let's try this. If it works, we're going to keep it. If not, out of here. So what's your steps to doing that? Teach us.
Yeah. So I think that, again, from the beginning, we talked about how initially you're like all the things, right? So like, one of the most recent conferences that we were just at was $1 Billion Seller Summit. And years ago, that's I think where we actually met, but years ago we went to that conference, and it was like all the things. And it was so important to like take in all the things. And that was a point of where we were like testing stuff out and trying to find out what we wanted to do. And but as you get a little bit seasoned in the events and things, like, when we leave, I'm not trying to implement all the things. I'm truly trying to I'm prioritizing, because you can't execute all the things. And by the time you try to learn or execute all the things, there's new stuff. So you're going to be behind. We're like, okay, I have 15 different things that I can potentially do. Am I going to try and do all the things? No, you want to pick what is going to be most aligning with your business now. What can you, focus on and execute on now, and do that well. If that means after you've done with that, like, you might have a couple other things on backup that you might want to work on. But now it's so much less of a intense situation when I go to events, because a lot of times there's things that I know I do take a reflection of what are we focused on in our business right now, and then when I'm there, that stuff is what I'm receiving. So all the other stuff just kind of, it's not cluttered. I'm not being like, oh, we got to do this, we got to do that, we got to do this, we got to do that. I just sit back and I'm like, okay, well, this isn't really something that I'm working on right now. It doesn't mean that I'm not listening. It doesn't mean that I'm not open, because it might be something that I can use or apply later. It's just not something that I'm so like pertinent on, because again, what if I take something in and oh, we should do TikTok or we should do whatever. Well, right now, if I'm not ready to act on that, that's good to know. It's good to know that this is a, very an awesome platform that people are having success with. But if we're not going to utilize it and act on it right now, guess what? In a year, 6 months, or whatever, when we are ready to act on it, there's going to be different content that we need to take into focus. So I just filter really, really quickly. And then I do identify those things. I mean, there was, even walking in, I knew that one of the speakers, because I talked to him a couple years ago, that they were really, really focused on their warehouse operations. And at the time, we were having conversations, and it was cool to listen to, but I wasn't taking anything from. I was just connecting with them and having a conversation and knowing what they specialize in and whatever. We're just hanging out. Well, this year they actually talked about that stuff. They were talking about hiring, and when the gentleman was going to be a speaker, I was like, oh, I know that I'm going to want to listen and pay attention to this because these are things that I'm, looking to really focus on and grow in here. So again, a couple years ago, I wasn't really like, again, I knew about it, but I wasn't taking it in to actually apply. But I think it's really important to do that is to, before you go to an event, step back and be like, what direction am I going in right now? What do I want to focus on? And with that intention, I do believe that, most likely you're going to get, or some information that's going to help you progress. And that's really all I'm looking for with those events, and a lot of fun. Now we just pick the fun ones where all of our friends are going to be, the most amazing conversations. I mean, you really don't have a crappy conversation when you go to some, especially some of the higher level events, because these people are just incredible. Like the stuff that the experience that they have and the different things that they've done in their life and what they're currently working on, it's mind blowing. It's a blast. So yeah.
You said a magic word, and I want to come back to it: intention. Intention, intention, intention. It's such a crucial word. And I want to discuss this a little bit because I believe it's crucial, and you mentioned it. So I know it's crucial now if you mentioned it. That's something not a lot of people do, making an intention, myself included again. And that's how I realized how important this is. Before going to an event, like you said, okay, what is something that I'm focusing on in the business right now, instead of picking 20, 30 things, and then say, you know what, I want to get one thing out of it. And then if you get more, that's beautiful. But once you focus and you are clear about that one thing or two things that you want to take out, then your brain automatically will start looking for an answer to that specific question that you have. And it might not even be from somebody on stage. It may be because you're now attracting in a conversation that will potentially solve your issue. And I want listeners to really try this and really hear when we're saying this, because intention and focus is everything. And the more you are aware of this, the more it actually shows up for you. And me and you have plenty examples of manifestations, and maybe some people think it's too woo-woo. But when we come back to the to the ground level, we're in the real world, just having that intention, I want to get one thing, and I promise you, you will see it come to life. How has your experience been with when you put all your focus into one thing? Does it come true?
Eventually, like it might not be exactly how you envision it, but absolutely. I mean, that's every time, every
Yeah,
time. Like I said, it's, when you do have that intention, like you said, you are a little bit more open to that energy. It's just attraction. And like you said, we could be woo woo, and I'm all about, like, I've seen that stuff happen. I've experienced that stuff work.
yeah,
So big believer in that for sure. And I don't think it's not just like manifestation of just like wish. It's not making wishes. It's
correct.
understanding that, there is a certain level of energy that happens. Like, for example, when you talk to people at an event and you're sharing with them, maybe some of the things that you're struggling with, or some of the wins that you're having or whatever, inevitably, if you're really connecting with that person, they're connected with a lot of other people as well. And they know other people that might be able to, help you. And I don't know, I really just love connecting and learning, about other people too. But it's so neat to have those discussions and people be so versatile, or again, having connections with other people that they could be like, oh, you know what, you should actually like communicate or talk with this person or whatever. And that's really kind of what happened, because I was so focused at this, on the specific thing that I'm trying to solve within our business right now. It wasn't just the talk that was given. I knew, and before we went, we did have a discussion of, oh, what do we want to do and get out of this outside of like some really good margaritas and barbecue when you're going to, Austin, right? What do you want to get out of it? And so I knew, like I said, I'm going to be present. I'm going to listen to, his conversation or his talk, and I'm going to go and have a discussion with him and let him know about, how we had a talk years ago, and how that impacted. And how I knew I really wanted to make sure to pay attention during his talk. And during that, I let him know that prior to him even hitting the stage. And he said, oh, you know what? I brought my partner, John, here. And he, all of the stuff that you're talking to me about, like, that's really what he does. And I'm just like,
Oh my God, that's
awesome, cool. You
incredible.
brought so then I was like, well, you warn him warn him that sometime during this event, I'm going to corner him and we're going to have a discussion. So he can be on, be on notice for this. So then we're at a dinner and there wasn't really a place for us to sit. We were like going to grab, and I saw him in the line. I was like, oh, your partner told me that I have to talk to you and I have some questions about this. And so we ended up having dinner together. Like I'm just like, okay, well, let's go. So he's grilling me, I'm grilling him throughout this entire situation. So the people that are doing the thing that I am trying to learn, like one of our weaknesses or whatever things that we're really trying to get better at, is that was just basically a mentoring session right there. And like he's like, oh, if you ever need anything, just call me. Like,
oh my God, that's incredible.
okay, so that's that to me, like, and you can talk about all like the different like discussions, and I mean even some of the stuff, even your talk, like I don't sit there and say, like, people will just write stuff off. So when I say I filter well, it's not that I filter because I just tune out. I don't do that unless it's something that it's totally not my jam that I hate that John needs to pay attention to, right? So there's sometimes that happens. But for the most part, I'm open and I'm listening because this is again just like with that guy that I talked to a couple years ago. I didn't tune him out. I listened to exactly what he was saying. It wasn't something that I was actually going to be taking in and applying, but it's interesting. And I'm, understanding what he is sharing and his strengths. And I just thought that was amazing. It was a great story. And that's kind of the same thing. Like your discussion on like NFTs, like it might not have been something that I am looking to continue to act on right now, but I appreciate the knowledge. And you know what? It's in my head to be like, okay, now I know a little bit more about this. And yes, it might apply later in our business at some point. And so at that point, it's awesome to be able to do that. Like I said, you don't want to just check out, but you do want to be able to have that focus and that intention. And to me, I got out more, again, one of the biggest things that I'm, trying to work on right now. Now I have a personal connection with somebody that is doing amazing with those things. So that was incredible.
That's beautiful. And I love you mentioning that. And also on the flip side, when it comes to speakers, because, I was able to be one of the speakers at BDSS. What happens is, for speakers, when I talk to them, and a lot of them, I mean, unless they've been talking for 20 years, it's always this like, oh my God, like, are people going to receive this? Are they even interested in this? And I love what you said, because in this case, you heard this person talk a few years ago and you're like, oh, it's cool, like it's there. But then now you're like, oh my God, this is exactly what I need. So even for speakers, you're not always going to be able to get everybody's interest, and that's okay, because have the rooms on their phone or doing whatever. It's not that they're not necessarily listening to you. Is just not something they need right now. So that can also be for speakers, they can take that like, oh my God, that was the worst, but you never know who is listening. So going there with an open mind and an open heart and say, this is the message that I am sending out to the audience right now, and those who need to hear it will hear it, and those who don't, and don't get hung up on like, oh my God, like they weren't interested in NFTs or they weren't interested in this. Like, the ability to bring information and share information with the community, at least is why I do it. Being able to like discover something, learn it for myself, and then teach it to others. Because in that process of me, not only researching, finding it, understanding it my own, but me putting my take on it and showing it to the audience, maybe at some point somebody's going to be like, oh, it clicked for me. And that's all what we're trying to do, right? We learn and we share.
No, absolutely. And it has to be so challenging to be a speaker. I would imagine that is, I have done a couple events before, and it's hard because you're like, okay, I want to know my audience. I really want to deliver for them. I want to have an impact. But I think it also, one of the things that I think parallels to me in that situation is understanding that, say for example, two people read a book. You're going to get something totally different out of the book than I'm going to get, especially like some sort of spiritual book or something. Like it's going to resonate with you differently because we're in different places and we're focusing on different things, and that's fine. And there's plenty of books that I go and I will reread it. I'm a different person than I was 3 years ago. I'll read a book now and it's not that it's a totally different book per se, just whatever I'm like taking in is going to sit with me a little bit differently or apply a little bit differently because I'm at a different place in my journey. So I think that that's the other aspect of things. Again, I don't think it's necessarily something that we're not going to be able to like have everybody be like, oh, this is the exact thing that I needed at this time, because everybody's at a different place. Everybody's, sometimes they might not be ready for this aspect of things, because you know what, they need to get that foundational stuff in place right now. I had a lot of people, for our business be like, oh, you know what you need to do? You need to do, the Google ads, you need to do Facebook marketing or blah, blah, blah. And we're like, okay, well, first we need to solve for our inventory supply chain. Like this is this is that's great. You want to talk about this, but like this is a big struggle. And if it's a struggle for us, it's a struggle for all of our other competition. I don't need to sell more when I need to get more inventory. And so it's funny because again, it doesn't mean that that stuff isn't applicable. It doesn't mean that that information isn't fantastic. I know who to go to when I need it now. So I think when people go into events, I have heard people be like, oh, well, I didn't get anything out of an event, and not the $1 billion seller summit. That's not what I'm talking about. But there's been other events. And I'm like, you know what? That's unfortunate, because I do believe that even if it's not something that you're currently working on, you can always get something out of there if you're open to it and you're really like taking it. You know what
You have an intention going in, knowing
Yeah.
what you want to get out of it.
Right. Or it could be even, you know what? It might have been that one person that you met and you had, a 10-minute conversation and you connected with them. And you don't know, but 5 years down the road, whatever, you turn back and be like, wow, what? Because we talked about, like, when did we meet? When was that even? It was so long ago. We've seen each other at all these events. We just connected. Just like, it was forever ago. How does this even happen? And so you don't know what's going to come out of that. And so there could be a lot of different things. So I'm just love going to events. I take, in what now, like I said, I filter a lot quicker now because we're really focused on what we're doing. But if we were just, like I said, just growing our business and we're trying to be like, okay, what's the next play? How are we going to get more sales? Well, I'm going to be open and I'm going to pick one of those things and we're going to apply it. So
Yeah, so going forward for events, and I love that you mentioned that because I've done that in the past where I went to an event and I'm like, I didn't get anything out of it. And when I look back, I'm like, well, what did I want to get out of it? Oh, I don't know, anything. Like what? Whatever. It was this much. I should have gotten something. Well, something what? Like if you don't know
yeah.
what you want, how do you know it came? So again, that's so important to have that intention, whether even if it's just one small thing. Let's say you've never done this and you never thought of it. Like my intention is to meet a person that's going to make me laugh so hard that my stomach's gonna hurt. Like make it silly if you don't have anything else, because what I'm trying to show people is like as soon as you make that little intention, when it comes true, you're like, oh, wait, I can do that. I have this power. And yes, you do. So if you can start with little things like this that you can prove to yourself, and then you can be like, you know what? Now that I know my intention is I want to talk to a seller who's done exactly what I've done, gone through the same exact issue that's going to be able to help me bring light to my problem. And you might be surprised. You may be surprised.
Yeah. And I don't know what it's called. Like when, like if you go and you're like, okay, I'm going to go, I bought this new car. Right. And of course, then you're driving home. You never see this car on the road, but then you drive home and you see all the same car. Right. Well, it's because you're aware. And because that's kind of the same thing, like going into an event, if you aren't intentional or you haven't like taken the time to be like, okay, I have this awareness for this specific thing, you're probably going to miss it. That person that like John, I would have legit never probably because he wasn't like somebody that was coming out and be like, hey, like I'm going to meet all the different people. Like he wasn't like that. So like if I didn't intentionally want to go and get that information, I would have never had that conversation with him. It wouldn't happen. It just wouldn't happen because I would have been talking to all you guys, my friends, and I didn't know him from before. I wouldn't have known that he was like his business partner or whatever. So if I did not go with that intention, I would have never had that conversation. It just wouldn't. Yeah, it wouldn't happen. I would have just been hanging out with my husband at dinner.
This is so juicy. I love talking about this because it's like it just it's like it reinforces everything that you believe in, and then the more you discover it, the more you put your awareness on it, you're like, oh, I wonder what I can do next. I wonder what I can do next. I wonder, like, where can I apply this little magic to? And then you're like, oh my God, then I didn't know I could do this. And then you start focusing on like what else I can do, where else I can apply in my life. And next thing you know, you're on a roll of like self-development where you are aware of the things you do and you question and you analyze, like you said, and next thing you know, you have 10 Amazon brands.
We'll see what comes on after that. It is interesting because as the businesses had developed, that wasn't like, it'd be like, did you set out? Like, we didn't just decide to be like, oh, we're going to be Amazon sellers. That was something that was an evolution that came out, and it's a blast. It's a lot of fun. We feel incredibly blessed that, we've been in this space. But it is going to be fun to see too, like what is next in, 10 years from now or whatever. So I don't know. I'm just so thankful that we are, it, have the ability to kind of create the the life that we want, and
Mhm.
if something's working, fantastic, again, double down on it, and if not, you make adjustments. And I'm just thankful to be aware that we do really get to choose. And if you're not happy with something, then you change it. And I just don't look at anything with a um there's always, I don't know, there's always a way. There's always a way to figure something out. Or again, if you're not happy with something, I just never feel like stuck, thankfully, with anything. And I think that is that is truly is that mindset aspect of things. And yes, it could be hard, it could be, challenging, but I see a good amount of people, and more so, again, not the people that we get to connect with at events, because I think that thankfully they have that different, mindset for the most part, which is why some of the conversations are so fantastic. But I see some people that might feel stuck for some reason, and they're putting themselves in that box or whatever, and they're providing themselves their own restrictions, basically. And I don't know, that's one of the things that I just hope that people can start to get away from, and just recognize that there's anything out there for them to be able to do, and they're not stuck. And that's the part, like the wanting to be able to help or empower people so they don't feel that way.
Yeah.
We've talked, we're here for just a small blip of time, dust, we're just a little particle just floating
Mhm.
around, right, whatever. So
Exactly.
we
That's
all
how
have.
we get the most out of it. And you said, you always find a way to figure out. Like, I mean, this kind of just brings this whole podcast to this whole idea of like, if you have that in your mind that there's always a way to figure it out, like that's like, I don't even know if you were aware when you say it, but that's like your core. Like, doesn't matter what comes your way, Amanda is always having a way to figure out. Because somebody else could have said, oh, this always happens to me, this always happens to me, that this shit always goes down for me, right? But it's like, even rephrasing it, doesn't matter. I always find a way. And that's literally your core. It doesn't matter. Anything can happen. You always find a way. And if we start having our own mantra, right? Like whatever that is, like I always win, or, no, there's nothing I can weather, like whatever that may be for you, just having that in the back of your mind. Because you're right, as entrepreneurs, this conversation does come a lot because we're like super flexible entrepreneurs, right?
Yeah.
We learn this and we try this, but then having that knowing inside of yourself, everything will always be okay. I think that's
Mhm.
like the perfect way to close this. But before we go, any other words you want to tell to our lovely audience that are going to listen to this tomorrow?
Oh goodness. Yeah, I mean, that's pairing off of what you had just said, is that anytime you're going through anything that is challenging, looking back, because there's been a lot of challenging times, in our lives, and asking yourself, why is this happening for me? Because a lot of times people will be like, oh my gosh, this is horrible, why is it happening to me? um it's not. If you look at it and say, why is this happening for me? There's a reason. Whether there's this big roadblock in your way because you need to develop the skills to get over it, because there's something bigger waiting for you that you have to challenge yourself for, or is this roadblock here because it's truly supposed to be a roadblock and you might have to take a little bit of a detour? There's something in, if you could take a step back from anything that is, again, instead of having it be defeating, have it be, like motivating and empower you to figure that out. Like you said, everything's figure outable. I think there's a gal that wrote a book on that. Everything's figure outable. But
I think it's
you know,
Marie Forleo, right?
yeah, I think so. And so, but yeah, if you can just look at those situations, I think there's very few situations in life that you can't apply that to. Um, and again, use those lessons, learn from them. But yeah, just look at those. If you're coming up against something hard, just, why is this happening to you? And do what you can, overcome it, and then probably however long it's going to take down the road, you're going to look back and then you're going to be like, oh, that's why that's why that needed to happen. So yeah, I think that's one of the biggest things that I think can help, because the faster that you can get over those things, the more progress that you can make, because you just don't want to stay there. So that's
Beautiful. Well, thank you,
it.
Amanda. Thank you for making time for us. And please say
Of
hi to your
course.
wonderful husband and daughter.
I will. I
I
will.
look forward to seeing you in just very short time.
Yeah. Oh, yeah, for sure. Thank you so much.